Welcome to Chazin-the-Dream. I'm so super excited to have with us today Kirstan Cecil, who's the founder and the CEO of KC Business Growth Consultancy. So she, like I, have a background in marketing. She has 25 years of executive level brand and marketing experience and an expertise, a specialization in healthcare, wellness, and senior living. Throughout her career, she has led organizations through some pretty extensive growth and expansion into new organizational markets and unbranded territories with significant transformation. So Kirstan, are you ready to go chasing the dream?
I'm ready to chase the dream, baby. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, first of all, just let me start out by saying thank you for joining today.
Absolutely. I always love having conversations with you.
Well, amen. But now we have an audience. We have a
That's
pulpit.
right.
We have a pulpit to share our respective backgrounds. And so one of the things about your background was when we were talking before, obviously we share functional experience, careers in marketing, but you were talking to me before. You said something about your experience in terms of values and how you use them to build reputational brands to help organizations be successful. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your experience. Could we dive a little bit deeper into your 25 years of awesomeness?
Yeah, we can. We can. If we're going to start, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'll say this, and you and I have talked about this before I go back to the beginning. Culture to me is everything in an organization, and my job is in marketing. But I'm a firm believer that you have more than one audience in marketing, and one of the most important is your internal audience and your people and your team. And you need to be marketing to them as much as you're marketing out to the public. And so, kind of my experience going back to the very beginning, I was incredibly fortunate in my first job to work for two very strong leaders who not only believed in culture but lived it. And it was a startup organization, and we grew pretty significantly. But they really created a culture of accountability, candid communication, encouragement to try new things. And I'm convinced that is what allowed the organization to become as successful as it did. I think when you create that type of environment, that's when the magic happens, and anything can happen.
Yeah, you know me. I mean, you're just kind of pulling at my heartstrings. You talked about, allowing people the safe space to try. And
yeah.
I won't even use the word fail. So we'll just say to try and supporting them. I guess my question is from your perspective, like you personally, why do those values that your two leaders exhibit resonate with you? And I guess what are some of the values that you've taken out of your experiences in your career that are so important about, you said it yourself, culture?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think when you create a culture where people can bring their best without fear, then that's when the kind of things that you never imagined could happen can happen. And I think when you allow people to be their best, they leave at the end of the day and feel like they made a difference in their job, and they feel good about it. You want people, on your team that want to come back and they want to, keep doing it. And I know, as I grew into a leader and began to build and lead teams, it was clear that when you truly allowed them to be a part of the team and have a voice, and to be able to make their impact and leave their fingerprint, it made a significant difference in our ability to reach our goals and to accomplish what we needed to do.
You and I, I always love talking with you, but I wanted to ask about something you just said about, so you were fortunate in one of your first kind of formative roles early on in your career. And then you said, as you transitioned to leadership roles yourself, what was that journey for you? Like, how did you get from early on in your career to later on? And what were some of not only the experiences, but the impacts you had in those positions?
Yeah. So in that first job that I had, I kind of, started at the front desk and grew into different positions, and ultimately became the vice president of marketing within that organization. So, kind of grew up in that organization, I would say. And again, that impact definitely had an impact on who I was as a leader. And as I reflect back on my career, without a doubt, my proudest moments are the teams and the people that I was able to work with, and the way that they would then kind of describe me to others. Those are the proud moments when you hear your teammates describe that impact that you made on them. But again, I think that I was able to make an impact on them because I allowed them to bring their best. I encouraged them. And going back to what you said, and I think this is a big one, being able to try new things, take a calculated risk. I'm not talking about just going out there and doing whatever you want to do, but being thoughtful, but trying new things. You don't ever fail because you learn from all of them. Some will work and some won't, but you will learn from every single one of them. And when you can give that gift to people, new things are going to come about and changes are going to be driven for sure.
I have to confess, when I stalked you and I looked at all your online work and your profiles, and you and I have spoken previously, I didn't realize one of your journeys within an organization was from front desk to chief of marketing. And so that talks about an ability to kind of grow and progress in your career within an organization. And you said something really interesting about allowing people to bring their best. But what's your experience been with that, both yourself and in organizations you work for? When you and I both know in marketing, you hire somebody, it's called the job description. You hire them to perform roles and responsibilities on a job description. And that job description may be a very small kind of little world in which that employee can shine because they have all this other awesome stuff that isn't leveraged. So how did you achieve that in your career, because you have such tremendous trajectory? And also, how do you advise and counsel your clients and organizations you influence to kind of build out a culture that also does that?
Yeah. So I think that a huge part of being able to build that culture within an organization and within your team is I guess the confidence to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and to not be afraid to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And I think that there are different types of leaders out in the world, and I've worked for both. The leaders that do exactly what I just said, and that they really encourage and value, what you can bring to the table. And I've worked for leaders that really just wanted you to do what they told you to do. And they didn't want you to kind of share your gifts and experiences in a way. And maybe because that threatened them, I'm not sure. But, it's a clear difference working under, one environment versus another. And when you're in that positive environment where you feel like you're supported and encouraged, you bring better work. It's your juices flow, you're more creative, you're more thoughtful, you're more strategic, versus, when you're kind of being told what to do, that's kind of, dead man walking, in my opinion. It's just, there's nothing to that.
How do you picture that folks in marketing are allowed to be creative and unleash their, I guess, untapped potential, when so much of marketing, as you and I both know, is being a partner and serving internal stakeholders like sales and leadership and customer care, and also representing or putting the best face of your clients forward? So how do you allow, as kind of your own thought leader in marketing, people in the industry, in the profession, to kind of shine?
So I think a lot of that is really letting them try different things and figuring out what they're strong at. It's kind of going back to what you said. When you hire people, you've got a job description, you do the interview, you get to know them as best as you can in a very, very short period of time, and then you bring them on your team. But working with them on a day-to-day basis and trying things and realizing, where their strengths really lie, and then capitalizing on that. A lot of my team members in the past have been younger, newer in their career. And so I feel like I really played a role in helping them figure out, where am I strong? Where do I want to develop? Where did I think I might want to be? But that's maybe not my strength. And so I'm going to focus in different areas. So kind of understanding that, but going back to what the other part of your question is, marketing is supports everyone in the organization, I believe. And I think that marketing has to have a collaborative spirit. They have to be able to work with sales, with operations. It's all a big circle for the customer. And so when we're going to pass the baton, we want to make sure that we've got strong partnerships and it kind of, lines up. But again, a lot of that is allowing people to go and do their thing and not micromanage every step of the way, because you can't do that. You've got to allow your team to go out there, build those relationships and do their thing. You can't be there every step of the way.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm actually hearing two discrete kind of parallels that you're talking about. One is in terms of developing your people, is you said before, getting to know their strengths and their passions. That to me sounds a lot like coaching and mentoring and getting to know people. So I want to ask you how you've done that. Yeah. And then, so that's like your internal group, right? Your people. And then the other piece of what you're saying sounds a lot to me like marketing is in many regards a field of psychology to get to understand how people like consumers or your clients behave. And also, one of the things you told me in a prior conversation was how important storytelling is. As marketing. So I'm curious how you, throughout your career and maybe examples or ways you work, have done those two pieces of the internal people development by getting to know them, and externally how to get to know your potential market segments and influence them.
Okay, great. So we'll start with the inside audience and kind of doing the communication with them and building that team. And again, I think that to me, and this is a big part of what I do now with my clients, is the internal team needs to understand who the company is, where the company's going, what their challenges are. So we have to be honest. We can't always just celebrate the good. We've got to talk about the struggles as well. And then as leaders, it's our job to then help them figure out the role they play in that dynamic. And that requires kind of ongoing communication. That's not kind of a one and done thing. And that's why I'm a huge fan of developing strategic internal communications plans, so that you're regularly in front of your team and talking about, what's working, what's not, and where we're going.
I have to jump in, and I know I'm, interrupting you, but are you daring to propose that there's a benefit to sharing the strategic direction of the organization with your people? And then are you implying that there's no such thing as too much communication?
I know it sounds crazy, and it might be too early on a Monday morning to go there, but yeah. And, and it's so funny that you say that, though, because it's so many organizations, and I don't think it's intentional, but they skip that part. Or they rely on their leaders to do that on their own, but it's never kind of an organizational thing. So it's, you're not sure what's being communicated out there. But yeah, I mean, I'm a put it all on the table kind of girl in everything. And so to me, because I know that's how I was and that's how I am, the more you tell me, the better I can help you. And so that's why I'm such a firm believer in getting that communication going constantly, because, the more people know, the better they will serve the organization, period. It's really that simple.
And so that's, I guess, one piece is understanding how to communicate with your employees, and you were kind enough to share with me that you've kind of taken a very proactive role in developing people and kind of getting to know them and kind of be able to unleash their talent. But externally, into the world, once you have this brand, right, this organizational brand, what are some of your, I guess, actionable tips or best strategy around how do you market a reputational brand? Like, we're not talking about products, we're not talking about services, tangible stuff. We're talking about core values and vision and mission and legacy.
Yeah. So I'll say, first and foremost, when you want to communicate that, you need to know who you're communicating it to. And that really is taking the time to step back and say, who is our ideal customer? And it might be 2 or 3 different types of people, but who are they? You know, what are they, where do they live? What do they drive? What do they value? What do they struggle with? You know, what keeps them up at night? Until you know that, you can't market to them because you're not clear on what you're communicating to them. Once you know who your customers are, and this goes back to the storytelling, it's everybody loves a story. It's such a great way to kind of explain something in a way that draws people in and helps them understand or see themselves in that space. And so storytelling is a huge part of what I do in marketing, because I think it's a really good way to connect with people, because people like to do and work and experience things with people that they connect with. And so that's kind of the job of marketing, is to draw those connections through understanding who they are and connecting them with a story.
I mean, telling stories to people that you know intimately, regardless of whether they're internal, external, that sounds really, really strong as far as you recommending a best course of action. I guess my curiosity is for you in terms of right now and in the coming years, growing out KC Business Growth Consultancy. Where do you see your business going to? And how would you say kind of throughout your career, the narrative arc, what do you plan on applying as far as lessons learned to grow your firm's ability to tell stories and help other organizations do the same?
Yeah. So as far as where do I see the organization going, it's one of my favorite things about kind of being out on my own is my ability to work with so many different organizations and help them make an impact. I do a lot of work with small and mid-sized businesses that have kind of reached that point of they've been doing a lot of it on their own. They know that they need to bring in some expertise to take it to the next level. And that's when I'm coming in. And so for me to be able to help more and more organizations like that, that's my goal. And part of that is building out my team. So going back to, you know, kind of having that team is to building out my team and making sure that I continue to bring in people and resources that have those same values and will serve my clients in the same manner that I will. And so that's kind of the future. And Ethan, you're going to have to remind me, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, as you kind of look to next year, you know, as you we end the calendar year and you're thinking about 2024 strategic planning, how do you take all of those lessons learned? I mean, throughout your 25 years in marketing, how do you kind of think about growth? And I'm curious about any thoughts, how you plan on growing the practice in terms of who you partner with, who you build relationships with, because you yourself said it's all about building relationships and telling stories.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I think as I have over the years developed my business, one of the things that more recently I've done, and I'm definitely going to be focusing on in the coming year, is really looking at, again, I share this with you, it's not just marketing. So when I come into a business, I focus on 3 things. And I've really honed in on this because I know that when these 3 things come together, that's when the big growth can come. So it's the marketing strategies. So we know that, like it's understanding that. But it's also the internal communications, which we've talked a lot about. It's making sure your team is ready before you say anything to the outside world. You've got to make sure that your team's ready to handle it. And then customer journey mapping. And that's similar to the internal team communications, but it's looking at the consumer and the entire process that they go through with your organization, where there are gaps, leakage, opportunities, and all of that, everything in between. So that's really, I focused in on those kind of 3 things. That's the trifecta to success and growth, in my opinion. And so honing in on that is definitely a huge priority for me as I'm looking at the coming year and my offerings to the people that I'm working with. As
Yeah,
far as
I'm sorry, but you
yeah,
say something and you talk as if I'm an expert and I'm a neophyte and you're the subject matter expert. So I want to dive a little bit deeper. So
okay.
you're right. We talked about the marketing as a bigger piece of the organization's strategy, and marketing is how to support the sales. Like you and I've talked about a lot.
Yep.
And you're right. We also talked about internal communications, but
Yep.
you said something else as far as kind of the triad of services that or relationship things you work on with clients.
Yep.
The customer journey mapping.
Yeah.
And I love when you had kind of talked to me a little bit about it before. Can you go a little bit further? It sounds like what you're saying is you mark all of the touch points in the relationship exchange. Is that a correct kind of assessment? Like what does that actually entail?
Yeah. It's actually it's a pretty cool process, and it's a very eye-opening process for organizations. It's one of the favorite things I do. But it is literally laying out a map of from first point of contact. So where are we marketing? What are we asking them to do? And then again, all the way through. So if they see an ad, what are we asking them to do? Go to the website. Okay. When they go to the website, what are we telling them? What are we asking them to do? Is it easy for them to do it? If it's not easy for them, why? What are the issues? And so, like when I talked about gaps in service,
Right.
You may find we're driving a ton of traffic to the website, but nobody's, what if it's calling to make the next appointment? That's a gap. So then we'll mark that, and then we keep going. So you keep going through the process. When somebody tries to call, we're getting a lot of a call volume, but the phones are being answered at a 50% rate. We mark that. So you kind of go through that whole process of, when they come in, go to the end. Are they leaving reviews? If they're not leaving reviews, why? We're going to mark that. So it's every aspect of that business. And then you go back and say, okay, if we're losing people here, then what do we need to do to resolve that issue? It might be adding something, it might be taking something away, it might be doing things differently, but really digging into every step of that process. Because think about when you go through, I'll give an example, like with the doctor's office. If you go, you see, you're like, okay, I like this doctor, great reviews, I want to go to the doctor. You go onto the website. There's no way for you to make an appointment online. So that's frustrating. You're already frustrated there.
Yeah.
So then you have to call. So you call the practice and it rings and it rings and it rings. Maybe you get an answer. If you get an answer, maybe you're put on hold. All of those experiences are going to determine whether you become a patient or not. And so really identifying that and making sure that it's clear. And even once you become a patient, can you do all of your paperwork online? I mean, we're living in a digital world now. So that's a lot of what we're working on. How easy is it? If someone's got their phone, can they do it? And if they can't, fix it.
It sounds to me like, as I listen to you kind of walk through this process, right? So it sounds like an organization could definitely benefit from this process mapping that you go through to learn where there may be potential disconnects in their outreach or communication. But I'm curious, just anecdotally based on your experience, how many organizations genuinely care about that interaction or lack of engagement they have, and how many organizations are willing to kind of pay for an expert to come in and map all of those touch points or disconnects?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think that most organizations, they're more focused on one piece of it. So for example, they might recognize, okay, our phones, they sit on hold for a long time,
Right.
but we'll deal with that later. What most organizations don't do and is look at the whole process. And you have to remember that the answering of the phone is one thing that one person experienced. They're experiencing everything else, whether you're paying attention to it or not, they're experiencing that. And so the map and looking at the whole picture, once we do it, is a huge benefit, and organizations very quickly see where they have to fix things, but also maybe where there's additional training needed, maybe where there's additional services or technology needed. So it's bigger than just kind of that process mapping. But going back to your initial question, it can be a tough sell to companies. It really can, because it's not something that people talk about on a regular. It's not, businesses don't sit around and say, let's talk about the customer journey. That's just not, in the vocabulary. It's not what they do. So a lot of what I have to do is kind of sell them on that and help them understand the benefit. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times that kind of comes in as an after they've brought me on to deal with something else. I'll introduce this to them and they'll kind of see the benefit. But I have never worked with a client through that process where it wasn't incredibly eye-opening. They were very thankful for the process and made changes that impacted their business growth because of the process.
I listened to you tell the story of the journey mapping and the marketing and the internal communications, and I don't really see them as three separate services, but to what you've told me previously, it's really foundationally three layers, right? So the one is the top level marketing strategy that fits into the business strategy. That's one. And then the internal kind of communication of you communicating with your people to let them be powerful. And then the other piece is looking outwards to your client, I guess, experiences and you enabling them to see the forest from the trees so that, I really kind of see a little bit more clearly today now how what you do fits together in terms of how you serve clients. So I guess my curiosity is moving forward as we kind of wrap up, unfortunately, our time together today is as we look to next year and you're looking to grow your business, who are the kinds of people, now that you know your values, what drives you, who are the people that you look for, I guess, in terms of partnering with them, working with them? What are their values? Like, how do you fit in terms of your philosophies of doing business with people who you strategically partner with?
Yeah, I think that the people that I definitely connect with and work best with are organizations that are ready to hustle and want to grow. I like the let's get in, roll up our sleeves, get dirty and make it happen. And so, those organizations, and I think organizations that are truly open to that. A lot of organizations kind of get stuck in the, well, this is how we do things. And that's always a challenge, not one that you can't overcome, but it's much easier to work with organizations that realize there's room for improvement and we're ready for that. And then again, to me, organizations that value their people inside and that they value the experience that they're going to give to their customers. That's important. You want people that believe in that and want to provide just a best-in-class experience inside and outside of the organization. I mean, those are the ideal clients.
And so for those people who do fit your kind of philosophy and your approach to working together and doing business, how can people reach you? So like, if anybody's interested in having a follow-up with Kirstan Cecil, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So they can go to my website, which is kirstancecil.com. Or they can come and visit me on LinkedIn. And that's another great way to connect with me. I would say those are the two best ways. And then on my website, they can schedule time with me. They can email me just to kind of ask questions and we can connect that way.
Absolutely. So Kirstan, I'm going to put the link to your website and your LinkedIn profile in below, but I just wanted to kind of end by saying thank you so much for giving us time today to kind of hear about your experience and your kind of career journey and what you're looking forward to do in terms of your growth. I really appreciate you appearing on Chazin-the-Dream.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love our conversations. This was fun. This was a good way to start a Monday. I'll do it every Monday if I could.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.